This is the door through which you must pass. If you can do this, then the rest is almost downhill.
Hello, and welcome to the Arts of Language podcast with Andrew Pudewa, founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing, or as many like to say, IEW. My name is Julie Walker, and I'm honored to serve Andrew and IEW as the Director of Marketing. Our goal is to equip teachers and teaching parents with methods and materials which will aid them in training their students to become confident and competent communicators and thinkers. Happy March to you, Andrew. March is our Unit 7 month.
And so we march forward.
Yes.
Into a new unit.
Yes. I remember sitting in your workshop the very first time I heard about teaching writing structure and style, and I was just in awe of how much this process makes sense. And when we got to Unit 7, where it seems that that's where everybody else starts teaching writing, I knew how to tackle Unit 7 based on your teaching because of all that foundation that you had laid. So I think that's a really important point.
It is so interesting over the years, as you know, I've been teaching it, you've been teaching it, we've all been getting better at teaching it. More and more is it crystal clear that the units are brilliantly ordered. Not just because we solve the problem of I don't know what to write about, which a lot of people have when they, face a prompt or an on-demand task or a journaling or any of that, but because of the development of the thinking skills, the organizational skills that are so gradually but solidly, effectively built through units 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that when we hit that Unit 7, everyone kind of knows, okay, this is how you're going to do a paragraph, and this is how you're going to ask yourself questions, and that it's really, rather than having to think of something in order to learn to write, which is kind of the way most programs operate.
Right.
Have an idea first. Then we'll figure out how you can write about that.
Right.
Instead, learn how to think by writing.
Right.
And so we start with the dictated content and wean the student through, these stages of story and reports and pictures and research and those skills. And so the students kind of are like, yeah, I know what to do now. I know how to do this, and I have an idea, and I know what to do with this idea.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it is a delight to see.
Yes, and to see the kids respond to this. They just now, after months of writing, and sometimes it's a little arduous for them, sometimes it's not, but when they get to Unit 7 and they know what to do, to see their little faces just light up. They can't wait to get started. I remember sitting in your workshop actually most recently when we were recording the second edition of Teaching Writing.
You were listening very carefully.
Oh my
at
goodness.
that point.
Yes, very carefully. But there was one thing you said that I loved so much that I put hidden on the inside flap of the Teaching Writing Structure and Style box. So listeners, if you have that box still on your shelf somewhere, open it up and look at that inside flap. It says...
I'm so embarrassed to say I have never looked at that, and I don't know what it says.
It's kind of a secret little place.
Oh,
and
an Easter egg.
Yes, it's an Easter egg. And I was actually hiding it from you because I was kind of taking it out of context. But I love this quote, and you said it while you were teaching Unit 7 to this group of teachers and parents. It was, this is the door through which the writer must pass. So now that the Easter egg has been revealed, what does that mean, and why in Unit 7 did you talk about that?
Now, see, I thought you put it there because people have to open the box to get into the course. So
Well, that is
that's
true.
the door. So maybe there's a double meaning to it. But I think one of the most enjoyable moments when I do teach that TWSS live is, I'm hitting Unit 7. I say, okay, here's how the whole model is, and this is the kind of stuff you would do. But the best way to learn it is just jump in and do it. And then I solicit from the group something to write about. And I usually say, pick something that is insignificant, something small, something that you think might be hard to write about, to think of enough stuff. And, sometimes people pick a huge subject like coffee. No, shrink it down. Coffee filters. Okay, maybe. And you usually end up with something along the lines of paper clips or pocket lint. That was what I had the last time I taught it. Pocket lint.
Okay.
And so I grab one of these things that's, toothpicks, something, and I say, okay, now how many of you, if I said, please take out some paper and write approximately 500 words about pocket lint, how many of you would find that a bit daunting?
Yeah.
And usually 2/3 or more of the hands go up because it does seem, well, what would you say about something so seemingly insignificant and small? And then we go just to step 2 in our whole process. So step 1 is you get a subject. Step 2 is you think of possible topics, things about, aspects of. This is, as we teach in the HSE course, the High School Essay Intensive, this is the thinking skill of division. And it goes way back to Aristotle. I didn't come up with any of this stuff. But that idea of now you've got this thing, pocket lint. So what are some things about pocket lint, aspects of, topics pertaining to, elements of? And people, what do you think people would come up with?
Pocket lint. See, I would rather you talk about cotton balls because that's what we did
Yeah.
on the video, but that would be cheating.
But pocket lint, it's almost your most insignificant thing you could imagine, but well,
it gets under your fingernails.
Okay, so how would you make a topic out of that? You'd say,
well, problems.
Okay, problems.
Right. You can probably tell whether or not the garment has been laundered recently because there's pocket lint in the pockets if it hadn't been laundered correctly, which is to turn the pockets out.
Okay,
of
so
course.
that could be turned into
Avoiding pocket lint.
Avoiding pocket lint. Okay.
How to solve the problem.
Solving pocket lint, yes.
And I imagine that there could be some benefits to pocket lint.
Well, maybe not benefits, but perhaps some uses. What could you do with pocket lint?
Well, having a granddaughter now, I can imagine, could we find some type of entertainment possibility with this pocket
Sure,
lint?
yeah.
You'd have to have a lot.
Crafts. I actually learned a new one I never would have thought of just in this last one. Fire starter.
Fighters.
Like if you're trapped out somewhere and you've got only wet leaves and stuff and one match and you've got pocket lint, could save your life.
Okay.
What does pocket lint symbolize to us? The
dredges of society. Gunk
or
falling between the
or
cracks.
the messiness of life in general that we just don't. Okay, so now we've listed 3, 4, 5 possible topics. Right? Problems with, uses of, eliminating. Could probably go with types of pocket lint. If you had, 50 people in the room, you'd get 7, 8, 9, 10 things.
Yep.
Okay, so then that is the magical moment. And I say, okay, of those of you who thought that it could be challenging to write 500 words about pocket lint, how many of you now feel that's not going to be nearly as challenging as you first thought?
Right.
And everyone's hand goes up.
Yep.
And that's the point where I say, this is it. This is the door through which you must pass. If you can do this, then the rest is almost downhill. The process is very, very manageable, doable, achievable. If you can't get this far, you're kind of dead in the water.
Right.
Again and again, I have seen this with both students and adults. If you just say, write about your dog, write about your home, write about kindness, write about stars, and you just pick some random thing, or you even give them a little more specific type of prompt, a situational prompt. compared to restaurants or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you just start writing whatever's the first thing that comes into your head, and you keep writing whatever happens to come next, you end up with something that's not organized at best, irritatingly rambling, redundant, and thin in content. But if you say, okay, follow the program, follow the system. Step 1, what's the subject? Step 2, list the possible topics. Then, okay, if you got at least 3, you're good to go. If you got 5 or 6 or 7, all the better. And then you would choose the topics, the number of topics you need for the model, for the target. And we go back to that length dictates structure and number of paragraphs. And then you run your litany of questions about each of those topics individually. And I've seen, kids 9 years old learn how to create an outline by taking notes from their brain by asking themselves questions about these different aspects or something. But if you can't get that list of topics, you're kind of stuck. My dog is a really cool dog, and I really, really love my dog because he is awesome, and he is really, really fun, and he is the greatest dog in the world. The end, right? And we've all seen that.
Right. Now, I know that in the TWSS, you do that exercise that you just described. Let's think of something, and then therein is the subject. That probably is not going to happen in a classroom, is it? Where the kids just think of something that they're going to, the subject, and then come up with the topics. Usually they're given a prompt or some type of story.
Yes, but a prompt usually has a large number of possible subjects.
Oh, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So if it is a kind of situational or narrative prompt, you find yourself lost in a forest. Tell what happens.
Be careful about coming up with these things off the top of your head.
Yes.
Because sometimes they turn into actual prompts that you do in a class.
Yes. I was thinking of ones that I've read, particularly working with schools or state standards that include writing prompts. One I remember quite well was from the state of Alaska many, many years ago. It was a 3rd grade benchmark prompt. So every 3rd grader in the state of Alaska wrote to this question. Think of something that has not yet been invented.
A 3rd grader.
Tell what it does and why it might be helpful. Something like that. And you just, all these 3rd graders is like scratching their head,
Right.
Think of something that doesn't exist,
Right. Wow.
Now, I'm sure that, some of them were able to come up with some crazy thing like a machine that turns water into ice cream, or maybe they got that from some cartoon or movie or something they get. So, no matter what the prompt is, children are limited to the pieces of memory that they can extract and put together to come up with an idea. I've seen, write about your favorite place to eat. I mean, that's broad. It could be your own dining room. It could be, Taco Bell, But even so, what do you say? If you just say, I really love Taco Bell because it is an awesome restaurant, and I really love the tacos at Taco Bell because they are super awesome, and you get this ramblingness. Now, if you have the habit of thinking into the thing, seeing into the thing, before you ever write a sentence, what are some aspects, elements, things about this restaurant? And then you step back, and that's the first step in analysis, is being able to break something into some components and look at them and then ask value questions. What's good or bad, best, worst, problems, solutions, significance, impact.
Right. So you started to describe the different steps of the Unit 7. So let's just continue that.
Right. So step 1 was?
Come up with a subject.
So subject. And that may be dictated kind of specifically, but usually there's kind of like a domain. So if someone said, write about a person who's had a strong influence on you. That's very typical, by the way, type of question for a college application, university application. Write about a person that has had a strong influence on you. Okay, that's the domain. Now you have to decide the person. That's the subject.
I see. Right.
Then you would say, okay, in what ways, did that person influence me? What are some things about that person, aspects of our relationship?
And those become the
elements,
topics.
and those become the possible topics.
Possible topics, right.
So then you choose the number of topics based on how many paragraphs you need. And this is really part of, I would say, the most valuable stuff we can quickly and easily teach to a college-bound student. Because if you go off to, a high school class or college class, very often they'll say write a certain number of words, essay contest, college application essay, number of words, write a certain number of pages. But that's not helpful in terms of knowing how many divisions you want, how many topics to have.
Right.
And so being able to translate words into
number of paragraphs.
Or pages into words into paragraphs.
Right.
Then the student can say, aha, if that's my target length, then I know how many topics I need. If your target length is one topic, then boom, pick one and go through the process, and then you can specifically talk about this aspect of that thing. If you want two, then you've got two topics. You make a division and have at least two things about. So if you wanted to write 2 paragraphs about a restaurant, you could write about the environment and the food, and those would be the 2 things. If you then wanted to write something longer, you would add a topic. And it's often when you get to the 3rd topic that it kind of begs for a bit of embedded repetition. So we usually go to the 5-paragraph model, where you have the introduction, you will state the 3 topics, you will put them in there somehow, and then you have a paragraph on each of those 3. So then you could talk about the service at the restaurant, the environment, and the food, right? If you had a little information about the history, that would be great background information to go in the introduction.
Right.
And then you could also kind of, in the conclusion, say, of all that I told you now, what's the most significant, most important, most relevant, most meaningful, most useful bit of information, and why is that significant? Right. And so that 5-paragraph model, now what if you need something longer? Well, you can add some topics. You could tell 4 things about that restaurant or that place or your dog or the person or whatever.
The pocket lint.
The pocket lint, yes. And if you wanted to go longer, you could actually probably go up to writing maybe 5 topics, get a 7-paragraph piece. So there's that flexibility between 1 and 7 paragraphs. Now, if you want to go over 7, the rules change a little bit. We introduce those in the Unit 8 models.
Right.
But the person who's been through our program is generally aware that the 5-paragraph Unit 7 is the same model. The My Dog model is the same as the 5-paragraph Unit 8, the Champlain, and that's the starting place. So it's kind of a continuity.
Right.
We start with Unit 7. You can do 1 or 2 or 5, and you get the information from your brain. You move into Unit 8. Now you start with 5. You can have 6 or 7, and you're adding to what you think about research that you're conducting, so that your academic writing is supported.
Right.
So it's kind of a what would you say, a continuum that you can start with. And when I teach Unit 7 to young children, the first assignment is generally 1 paragraph.
Okay.
So something you know something about, and notes from the brain, and you can now tell me. With a 2nd or 3rd assignment, or with, say, slightly older, say middle school age students, the first assignment would be 2 paragraphs.
Okay. So
you have your subject, you divide it into 2 parts, and now you write 1 paragraph about each half of that. And then, the 2nd or 3rd assignment down that line, or the first assignment with older kids could be the 5 paragraphs. Take your subject, get your 3 topics. And it's always kind of handy to have more than 3, too, because you might think of something, think of another one, come up with another one, and have 4, 5, 6 options. Right. Then you can say, of these 5 or 6 options, Are any of them really similar and should actually be kind of rephrased into one topic? Or which of those go best together?
And that's actually step 3 in Unit 7, which is
choose
a subject, list possible topics.
That's step 2.
And then step 3 is choose your topics.
According to the number you need and what's related.
Right.
What would make sense together.
And the number you need is generally dictated by the teacher or by the writing prompt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So
and then what's step 4?
Well, step 4 would be to take notes from your mind, from your brain.
You mean you still have to create a keyword outline?
Yes. And as you know, and many of our listeners know, we begin with Unit 1 teaching keyword outline, and we continue through even the most advanced stuff.
Yep.
And of course, this is at the core of our teaching philosophy, which is separate the complexity.
Right.
Separate. First, figure out what you're going to write. And that's the outline process, whether it's getting information from a source text or getting it from what you think about a story or a set of pictures or a subject or random prompt. And then once you've got some ideas, then you can improve the organization of that as you write them. You don't have to do everything in exactly the same order that you first thought of it. But even more importantly, you can attend to the stylistic techniques and writing well.
Right.
So separating the complexity, that is – and when I talk to people, I'm just about to head out on a fairly rigorous convention season here.
Yes.
And, sometimes people will, just say, so in what way is what you do different than what anyone else does?
Right.
And I usually will start with that idea of, at the core of everything we do is we try to separate complexity. And this, of course, appeals to almost everyone.
Because they know that writing is hard.
It appeals to people who write well because they've discovered this. It appeals to people who never learned how to write because they were overwhelmed by that. They somehow managed to get through school, college, maybe even have advanced degrees, but they'll still stand there and say, I never really learned.
Right.
It appeals especially to parents who have kids that are really fast and they just whip it out, want to be done with it and run away. And they could do better if they could break it into smaller pieces. And then perhaps the people who are most immediately appreciative when they start to understand how we do this are the parents of kids who've struggled either because of dyslexia or language processing issue or maybe a mild autistic type of challenge when it comes to language or even general organization, auditory processing, ADD.
Right.
We have piles and piles of testimonials from parents like that who basically iterate back to us. Yep. You're so organized. It's step by step. It breaks it into small pieces. It separates complexity.
Great. That's what we love to hear.
Yeah.
So now step 4, you've done the keyword outlines. Step 5 is?
Well, if you just have 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs, then you would just write those paragraphs from the keyword outline using your style checklist, following the EZ+1.
Exactly.
Only add a new style technique when what you've taught so far has become easy. And if there's 5 paragraphs, then we would probably try to break that into 2 chunks and having the students write it from the inside out. This is a discipline that always serves them well later on in Unit 8 when things get a little more complicated and you're having to get into the world of citations and, documentation and all that. So writing from the inside out. So topic-based body paragraphs first. That's the first step. Okay, now add the conclusion. And oddly, it actually works best in almost every case. There are maybe a couple exceptions here. If you write the introduction last, because now you really know what you're introducing.
Right. You
can state the topics. You can, if you want to try to have some kind of thesis statement that goes with your topics, you can do that. You can think of maybe a better attention getter device, all those things. So I remember when I first kind of discovered this I thought, wow, this is just about no one teaching this way.
Right.
And yet when I observe the students, it almost always makes a better essay.
Right.
And they themselves will admit that too. So that's kind of fun.
Well, and some of them are so young, they don't even know that there's a different way to do it. They start writing the body paragraphs first and the conclusion. Of
Well,
course you do it
and
that
you know,
way.
I had come across this kind of random how to write the perfect 5-paragraph essay kind of thing
Sure.
on the internet.
Sure.
And I thought, well, I wonder what they do, you know. It was being taught sequentially in that the first thing you have to do is think up an awesome thesis statement. And then you're going to create your introductory paragraph and you're going to come up with an awesome hook. And then you're going to have your thesis statement. And I thought, you know, my experience is that you're just opening a big can of worms there because you really don't have yet, at least the person following this instruction, doesn't really have a sense of what they're going to do after that.
Right.
So kind of, I mean, I guess reversing the process and saying, you know, here's the skeleton. This is what you're aiming for. Now let's start to add pieces to it. It just works so much better for most all kids.
Right. Well, for the last several years now, in March, we have announced our own IEW writing contest because it ties in so well with Unit 7. So can we now talk about our writing contest for this year, 2019?
So this means we have to give away money. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know why this makes you grumpy, Andrew. You're so happy and so generous when you see the results of our writing contest.
Yes, it's true. It's always a delight. And I would be the first person to say that motivation, you know, for kids is critical. And in the TWSS, I think it's in Unit 7 where I talk a little bit about different ways to motivate kids. And when children are young, you know, it's all about, oh, let's make mama happy, you know, and mama's very happy and the teacher is very happy and everybody's very happy. And then at a certain point, that audience just isn't as fulfilling as it needs to be to keep the child, you know, working hard, doing their best. So I'm very often promoting on my Facebook page, and I think we do on the IEW page, mention different essay contests that come up through the year, as well as, and I'll just put a plug in for a Magnum Opus magazine here too, because that's an opportunity for kids to get published by someone other than their home's refrigerator or the wall at their school. So having opportunity for being published, having essay contests, making it more public, more real to the big world.
So here's our big writing contest. Andrew's going to announce the prompt in just a second. But if you're listening to this podcast and perhaps we're no longer taking submissions this year because you didn't get to this episode until April or May, if you go to IEW.com/writing-contest, you will see all the writing contests that we have found on the websites, and friends of ours, HSLDA usually has a website, has a writing contest. And so we include them there. But of course, our writing contest is on this page as well. So go to IEW.com/writing-contest, and you will learn what this year's prompts are. And they are?
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough to decide. A lot of good options and some not so good options. So we threw out the not so good options and ended up, I think, with two that are appropriate to the age group. The level A, and this would be anyone up through what age grade?
3rd to 5th grade is generally what we say, so anybody younger than 12. So 11, if you're 11 years old or younger, you can do this prompt.
Okay. And this is, what is one of your favorite books and why? So this, immediately, if you're following our system, and if you haven't ever even heard of our system, but you've listened to me for the past 15 minutes, you should be thinking, oh, okay, let's make a division. what are 2 or 3 things about this book?
Well, first you have to choose the book because that's
Yes, you do have to choose the book. But a lot of kids, they can do that.
Sure.
Mine is Ping,
Oh,
the story of Ping.
yes.
Yes. And my reasons are it's beautiful and children relish it.
Many happy memories associated with Ping for you.
Yes, yes. Although there are some problems with Ping too. Anyway, I won't go into that. But what is one of your favorite books and why? And I like this prompt because we, of course, also want to promote a reading culture. We have material that helps parents do literature with children. We are constantly talking about the importance of reading to children.
Yeah.
And I might point out that there's no rule here that says, what is one of the favorite books you have read all by yourself
Right.
and why?
Right.
What is one of your favorite books? It is, I imagine, possible that there are 10-year-olds out there whose favorite book isn't one they read, but perhaps one that they heard,
Right.
that was read to them.
Yep.
So also I think, book can be interpreted broadly.
Okay.
I won't give any more suggestions
Nope.
there, but there are many, many different types of books when you think about it. So that's for the level A. And the older kids, this would be 12 and up, right?
Right.
So in our system, level B and C. So 12 and up, middle and upper school. This one, I think, is going to require a bit more reflection. And that is, what does it mean to you to show compassion to others? And so maybe, starting with the definition, what does the word mean in the dictionary? How is it used? And then how does that translate into your world and your life?
Right.
And you would immediately think, what would be 3 ways I could do that? Or what would be one way I could do it and 3 impacts of that one way? So there's lots of ways to approach the subject. There's lots of ways to approach the division. And, of course, we are offering cash prizes.
Yes. Before you talk about the prizes, though, I have to ask the question.
Yes.
How long are these supposed to be?
Well, that is a good question, which you have the answer to.
I do. So the younger students, we'd like to see 1 to 3 paragraphs.
1 to 3.
Yes.
Okay.
For the older students, we'd like to see 4 to 7 paragraphs.
Okay.
So it makes it, so if you're younger, 1 to 3, older, 4 to 7. You can translate that into number of words, but we don't have to do that in our system. It's
No,
just paragraphs.
and of course, longer is not always better.
Correct.
Something that is on the shorter end of that spectrum, but has greater impact, has more powerful vocabulary and style, has the elements of organization that make it easy to follow and attractive. People shouldn't assume that if you want to win, you got to do the longest.
Right, exactly, right. And we do get hundreds and hundreds of entries every year for our writing contest.
We get hundreds and hundreds?
Yes, we do. And it's very exciting. So anyone can enter this contest, whether you're an IEW student or not. I imagine the IEW students probably have a leg up, but we...
But who reads all these things?
Well, that's another...
That's secret. We have judges.
We do have judges. Yeah. The final, okay, I will tell you this. We first of all make sure that you follow the rules and did you answer the prompt?
Right.
Because that's important. And those that we feel have answered the prompt, those are handled in-house by our customer service team. And then the finalists are shipped to our online instructors at the various levels, and they're the ones that choose the winners.
Okay. Well, and there are some pretty sharp, discerning folks.
Yes.
So if someone says, my favorite book is The Menu at Chili's.
Hey, if you spin that could be a fascinating read. Okay, and prizes. You started to talk about prizes.
So our this is for each group, right? The first prize is $100 cash.
Yes.
For the student.
Yes.
And $100 gift certificate for the parent or teacher.
Right.
Second prize, half that. Student and parent or teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And then third prize, half that,
Right.
25.
And that's where we stop. We don't do that.
That's where we stop. We otherwise we get down to 12.5 cents if we keep going, right?
Right, exactly.
1 bit. And so that's at both the level A up through 11 years old and the level B 12 and up.
12 and up, but we are going to cap it at 18. If you are 19, you're too old for this writing contest.
Well, I guess your kids and my kids will be disappointed at that.
They will be because they're all too old. And this writing contest does have a deadline. You have to have your paper submitted to IEW by the end of April. So
End of April.
Right. And after April, our contest ends. There'll be other contests on our website that you can look at.
Well, I think that's good timing because April is showers.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone is inside working on their essays while it's raining.
Yes.
And then May flowers, they're outside.
We can only hope.
We can hope.
So that's it. So go to IEW.com/writing-contest. You will see the rules of this contest and how to submit your paper because you are going to submit it electronically.
Yeah. Is it okay if people share that link with their friends?
Oh, please do. Yes, we'd like to have, I don't know, it might be a little overwhelming to have thousands of entries, but bring it on. We're ready. It's very exciting.
All right. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, you can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, or just visit us each week at IEW.com/podcasts. Until then, on behalf of Andrew Pudewa and the team at IEW, I thank you for the privilege of allowing us to partner with you on your journey toward better listening, speaking, reading, writing, and thinking.